welcome you. It's now my distinct pleasure to introduce Kathy Greenlee, who is everybody in this room knows, is the Administrator of the Administration for Community Living and Assistant Secretary for Aging, appointed by President Obama and confirmed by the Senate in June 2009. That's about as much as I'm going to read about it. This is a forum that we have waited for years to have the level of prominence that this issue has at ASA. And Bob has made sure that elder justice has gotten a forum and a bigger forum in each of the successive years. But it's because of Kathy's leadership on the issue that we are at the point we are today, and it is my honor to welcome her to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. Where's those timekeepers? Minding Bob is something that we should do, so I will stay on time. I just want to give my hats off and my thanks to Bob and the leadership that he's provided for the Criminal Justice Coalition. So thanks, Bob. He came to a meeting when I was Secretary of Aging in Kansas to a national meeting, national at that point, National Associations for State Units on Aging was the name, and did a presentation about the advocacy and the work it took to get the Elder Justice Act passed. And I was rather stunned that it was that hard, that it took so long, because it made so much sense from the beginning. So I can't believe it took a decade. And it was really through Bob's diligence, as well as many of the people in the room, that you stuck with it. We have more to do to work on that law, and I want to talk about some of that today, but I want to give my hats off to the leadership that's been working on the issue of elder rights and elder abuse for a very long time, and that law in particular. There are many of you here in the field of elder abuse and aging that are leaders. I just want to thank you and tell you that I have been here now for 5 years. It's nice to come to recognize so many colleagues, people committed to doing this work. One of my best and favorite colleagues is sitting with me this afternoon, Carolyn Coleman, who's the Acting Commissioner of the Social Security Administration. Carolyn has shown up. If you whisper this word out loud, these words, elder abuse, Carolyn will come by. She has come by every time and done everything that we've asked her to do, both when she was the deputy and now as the Acting Commissioner of SSA. She's a fabulous advocate, very concerned, as you will hear, with working with us all about the problems that we have with financial exploitation for people who are receiving social security benefits. So I just want to give my hats off to Carolyn. I also have wonderful staff today, so I don't do this by myself. Rich, I think this was a great idea. Where did you go? Such a great idea. I think Tony's going to have to slip out. So it's a great idea to take the Generations publication and then use it as a springboard for the forum and pull together the experts in this way. I think that was a fabulous. It sounds like that's a new addition to Bob and you doing this. So my point is, I love you all the same, and I love Bob Greenwood most. Paul Greenwood, not Bob. I love Paul Greenwood most today. So, yes, I think I need to tell him that I love Paul the most today, because I spent the morning at Paul's office meeting with 5 victims of elder abuse themselves. One of the hard parts of being in a federal job is the longer you spend working at the national level on policy, it's less frequent that you actually see real people. And I think it's important that we all stay grounded in the work and let the voices and experiences of real people, older victims, guide and inform this work. And in coming out here to San Antonio, Paul has a national and international reputation as a prosecutor. Those of you who are in this area are very fortunate to have him. I had a chance to meet him at an APSA conference, I think, a couple of years ago. Took the time then to make sure we met. He's provided valuable leadership at the national level. But this morning was special, being able to sit and talk to people and once again be reminded of the devastation of elder abuse. It's very humbling and sobering. If you all ever lose your way in this work, please go talk to the victims again. And if you don't currently know anyone in your life who's a victim of elder abuse, you should reach a little further and a little deeper to make sure that happens, because it's humbling. And we are really, I think, in service to them and their needs, and that was very clear this morning. Reminds us again also of the complexity from financial exploitation to physical abuse. What happens when people have lost everything and all of their money and all of their trust. I mean, it's very, very hard. One of the women we met with this morning gave decades in service to her country as a veteran and was abused by a caregiver. She hired, this is so I just have the privilege of letting Paul extra special today for putting it together. So Paul, thank you. So 2 years ago, at the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day event, we've got a lot of you who are new to the conference, but there were a few of us in the audience that day. Bob was there, Ray was there, Kathleen. 2 years ago, June 14th, June 15th is the actual date, but on June 14th, 2012, we had the first ever event convened by the White House to talk about elder abuse. We focused that day on financial exploitation because we wanted to bring in a broad array of federal partners as well as the private sector, particularly the banking and financial services industry. And I know we've got people that were there today who helped us, who also had helped sponsor this event. And it was a fabulous day. The year before, I had tried to get a proclamation for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and I couldn't. Because we do a lot of proclamations. In Washington, you do a lot of them in your state capitals, and I just couldn't because it's simply something that, you know, we do a lot of these, and we really have come a long way, both in our advocacy, certainly in the support that we have now demonstrated by this administration, this president, in the support for this issue. And we made a commitment, those of us who gathered 2 years ago, 2012, Carolyn was there. She shows up. We made a commitment to make that day epic. And I think we still are on track to do that. And those of us who were there want to look back and say we started to move this huge ship on that day, because I think that this is a testimony to that work, as well as the work that's happened for decades. What we did by pulling people together was start to focus specifically on what this administration could do across the federal government to help advance the problem and the issue and solutions with regard to elder abuse, and really engage directly with the White House on the breadth of these issues, and to find a way to implement the Elder Justice Act. And it was a beautiful and long-fought battle with no appropriations. And I have stated publicly my concern since I got here that the longer a law sits on the book without appropriations, the less likely it will be to be funded. Whether you're in the State House or in Washington, if you can't turn around and get appropriations, another good idea will come along, there's competing interests that are all very worthy. You must stay at the task if you want appropriations. They do not happen by themselves. And the mistake I have seen people make, and I've been in public service for more than 2 decades, is that people and advocates mistakenly think a good idea will take root, and bad ideas won't. And really that's not true. Bad ideas get funded all the time, and good ideas get left on the table. That if we want a good idea, like dealing with elder abuse, we want that to be funded, we have to go for it. And I think we are at a point in time in this next 12 months that is historic and will not come again if we miss it for several years. And that's what I want to be able to talk about. In working on this event 2 years ago, I'm working with the White House, one of the most immediate deliverables, I think 2 that I want to call forth. One is the establishment of the Elder Justice Coordinating Council. The Elder Justice Act created 2 federal organizing bodies, 2 committees. One is a federal committee made up of those of us in the federal government who have the most possibility of making a difference in the field of elder abuse. It is chaired by statute by Secretary Sebelius, and I'm her designee. Attorney General Holder is also named as Attorney General as a key partner. At the kickoff meeting, we had both Secretary Sebelius, we had Attorney General, we had his predecessor, and we have had leadership from all of the federal agencies since we met. And the purpose has been to engage with the community, to take input about what are the areas, the domains where we can make a difference, to get expert testimony and start looking, what can we do across the federal government that would make a difference? And this work continues, but it was a significant endeavor. The other piece we've not been able to move forward on, and that's another part that I think it's important to call out for those of you who work on the law, and that was the creation of the Federal Advisory Council to really call in the experts, and have not been able to move forward and get that established. So I have, working with our colleagues, both Justice and SSA, attempted to use the one body that we have to engage in public conversation by having very public meetings to get input on the issue of elder abuse. So it's been a fabulous process. It continues, and is something that you all need to pay attention to, because you have greater federal coordination in this space than ever before. There are many things that we feel like we can do with the federal government, ease of financial institutions reporting if they suspect fraud, the ability to do public education. Carolyn has some innovative programs at SSA. It's a fabulous endeavor. The other thing that happened as a result of that day 2 years ago was we got some additional money at the Administration on Aging and ACL to start planting some seeds, to start doing some demonstration programs, and also have been able to move forward on a very tiny way with some prevention dollars to start looking at the issue of data collection. There's all kinds of data about the incidence of opioid use, the increased mortality and morbidity because of people who've been abused. But what we know we have in this country is a significant lack of data about what's really happening at the state level. And in order to do that, we're going to have to invest money. So let me talk about what we have and what we don't have in this country to make sure everyone's very aware. See Kathleen over there. I can't see Kathleen. I can't talk about state APS without sort of noticing leadership of National Adult Protective Services Association. We have no federal home for adult protective services. This means there's not anyone in the federal government who has a contact list of all of the directors of adult protective services across the country. There's no federal home. Now, I could ask, frankly, Secretary Sebelius if she would have us do the federal home, and she would say yes, and we could do that tomorrow, and the office would be empty without funding. So to create a federal home, we have to have federal work to do, which means we have to have federal funding. But there is no federal home. We never built in this country the infrastructure to support adult protective services. Adult protective services exist. They exist in every state. They're state created, which means they're all different. They all collect different kinds of data. They serve different ranges of individuals. The only federal money that you will find that flows into adult protective services is because the state makes a decision to choose to spend their social services block grant, which is a federal fund, and make some of that money available. When I first started as assistant secretary, I called the states every year to find out what was happening because of budgets, and I heard every state tell me about increasing caseloads for the APS workers, decreasing numbers of staff because of layoffs. Elder abuse is countercyclical. As the economy gets worse, the situation gets worse, but the caseload goes up and the staff go down. So we need to know where we're starting from when we talk about needing to create a national infrastructure. Because I find in doing the work that I do, it's really important to dispel myths, and one myth is that we ever built this in the first place. Now, I run an agency that is woefully underfunded. Has been underfunded from the beginning since the Older Americans Act was passed in 1965. Continues to be underfunded. Lost over $100 million to decrease sequestration. I can come and make a passionate pitch for every single program that I run. And this year, we're going to talk about elder abuse because we never built it. This is way more complicated than being underfunded. This is about the fact that we never built the infrastructure. So what we started to do with some of our resources is start to contact every state and say, what are you doing? What information are you gathering? We think about this, and we've got some research in the crowd, how you follow along after things have been built and figure out how to come up with uniformity in definition, in age range, in type of abuse. So we're doing that work now. But to really create a federal infrastructure, we must create a national system and have that national system work with states. And in a national system with data, we can be better about the supports that we provide. We can be better about the advocacy that we have and the story that we need to tell. These are the kinds of things that we need resources to do. I would love to be able to tell you what a fabulous APS system looks like. These are the interventions and services and supports that make it different. I can't tell you that because we don't have a way to gather that information. We can't even establish best practices at the federal level. So last week, in the President's budget for ACL, Administration on Aging, the President dedicated $25 million in the fiscal year 15 budget for adult protective services. We must support the President's request. It will not happen. It will not happen by itself. Please don't think that since you think it's a good idea that it will happen by itself. I am so completely committed to doing everything I can to educate and advocate and talk about the fact that this is a critical national crisis. And if you can do anything, will you please introduce policymakers Because that was one of the things that was so clear in talking to victims, is, I think people have no idea what we're doing to older adults in this country. The way that nearly every one of them is called multiple times a day, the way they really are preyed upon. I don't think policymakers know this, nor do they know that we never go to this place. So let me tell you what the $25 million would go for. We would create the Adult Protective Services system. We create a national home. And we'll put this information up on the website and make it available so people can talk to these companies. But we really need to create a national APS data system and then provide pilot money to states so they can interface with us. And since I'm in California, I just want to give a shout out to California, who's been very clear with us that they want to partner with us as we lead and develop, because you have a well-developed and very strong elder use coalition and partners at the state level here in California. So we will take any opportunity to interface. We'd like to be able to then develop program standards. What's the best way of providing long-term services and supports to someone? How do we do a literature review? What's effective? We'd like to do an evaluation. You can't responsibly move forward with federal dollars without having an evaluation component implemented at the very same time, so we can find out what works. We need to implement money and have money for screening, so we know how to even find people who are abused. And we need basic foundational research on the characteristics of the victim, the characteristics of the perpetrator, the consequences of abuse. These are the things that we need to build. Now, when you worked on the Elder Justice Act, $25 million was not the target. It's much bigger. I don't want to say that $25 million will solve our problem, but we have $25 million on the table, and we should not walk away. I will go anywhere to talk about what we can build with this. And I found in the advocacy of the work, I didn't just open the budget last week and go, look, the president gave me $25 million. The work it takes to get to this point really means impressing on people what I just told you. We never built this. And that, I think, cuts through. It's not funded well. Lots of us are not funded well. There's other programs that are not funded well. We never built this system. And this is the time to do it. And so the process will be that Congress will start talking about this. I encourage you all to do what you can to support what the President has recommended. For us, it really is a historic time in this country to do something different, to move this forward. And I think this is a rare opportunity where we have leadership from the White House, leadership from the administration, and interest from every one of you in the room. And I haven't found anybody who doesn't care about this issue. We have to move from caring to implementation, and we have to tell people how they can help us. And this is one thing they can do right now in the next 12 months that will change the world, or at least take a giant step forward. Thank you for listening.